Channel Manager here at Uplevel Systems, and I'm joined by Cory Alexander, who's our CEO. Today, we're going to be going over our newest release, version 4.2. Our 4.2 release includes a number of new features, improved capabilities that are designed to improve your overall experience, as well as that of your customers. The important thing for us is most of these are a direct result of the feedback we get from you, our channel partners. So your input, your feedback is greatly appreciated, and we ask that you continue to do so. Our engineers need more work to do so keep sending in your suggestions as they come up. So as Tom goes through the slides, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A section of the Zoom call at the bottom of your screen, and we will address those questions at the end of the session. But please give us all the questions you can come up with, and I will turn it over to Tom. But thank you again for joining us, and let's get started.
Excellent. Thank you, Cory. So let's see, this webinar is all about the upcoming 4.2 release, which we are just finishing buttoning up and will be rolling out. So what we have going into 4.2 is, well, there's new hardware that needs to be supported, some stuff to simplify AD deployments and so on, but actually most importantly, things that address security and compliance. And there's been a number of suggestions, recommendations, requests over the months, plus things that we notice ourselves when we're on the support line going, wait a minute, this doesn't have to be this way. And so we try to improve the product, and there's a bunch of that also folded in. Before I dive into what's actually in the release, I'd like to point out that this one is what we refer to as a unified release. So as you all know, since we introduced Active Directory, we divided up the firmware into the 3.x train of firmware releases and the 4.x. And the whole reason for doing that was because when we first introduced Active Directory, there had to be an actual firmware update on the gateway in order to support the AD controller. But over time, we've been working hard to make to eliminate the need to have these two releases. In fact, the last few months, the functions and features of the two release trains converged to the point where basically the only difference between 4.x and 3.x was the fact that there was an AD controller enabled in one and not enabled in the other. And so basically with 4.2, what we're doing is just doing away with the whole idea of having a separate release train. So basically, we will be upgrading all the setups to 4.2. Things that are do not have AD enabled will continue not to have AD enabled. Things that have AD enabled will continue to have AD enabled, but basically they'll all be on the same release firmware, which will simplify everyone's life. With that out of the way, let's get into some of the various aspects of the new release. For a start, there's new hardware devices. The first hardware device that we are supporting in here is something we had a webinar on just 2 weeks ago, which is our new work from home gateway. So you can see a couple of pictures of the work from home gateway on the side. It's a nice, small, compact box. It is almost literally the size of the palm of my hand. Has 4 Ethernet ports, has no fan, which is pretty useful in a home environment. It's pretty unobtrusive. We've shipped it out to people to install in the houses, and they have never complained about, you know, this thing is big, honking great. It doesn't go with my living room decor, all that stuff. That's just not been there. Whereas the big white gateway did result in a bit of consternation in people's houses. The 4-port gateway has exactly the same capabilities as the full-size gateway with some exceptions. Well, first of all, it's got 4 ports. But it also does not have any storage, and there's no Active Directory controller built into it. We simply cannot see anyone in a Soho environment actually running AD in a tiny little device the size of the palm of your hand. So, however, you can actually log into an AD environment hosted by a full-size Uplevel gateway from this device just over the site-to-site VPN. It's primarily intended for remote workers and work from home employees, but is also usable in small offices if you got a 5-person office, maybe this is something that you might want to consider instead of the big white gateway with fans in it. Another hardware device that we introduced was a new outdoor access point. So the current outdoor access point that we're shipping has, I mean, it's pretty good, but it has a couple of things that we didn't like very much. For a start, it used a proprietary passive PoE injector. There were some issues with getting regulatory compliance on the regular 8.3 standard PoE injector when that came out. So the vendor had to go with a proprietary injector, but we didn't like that at all because it doesn't plug into our standard switches and so on. But this new outdoor AP will use basically standard 802.3 AE, AF or AT PoE. And so that makes deployment much simpler. In addition, it's uprated from IP55 to IP67. So you can actually, well, we do not recommend doing it, but in theory, the vendor says you can immerse this up in a meter of water. I really would not suggest immersing it in a meter of water, but it's actually good to know that you can have this rain down and nothing will happen at all. All of the other specs are the same as the existing outdoor AP. It's got the same 2x2 MU MIMO, 140-degree operating temperature, etc. We have this running today, and it's part of the release. And the gateway itself, the AP itself will be available very soon. All we're doing is taking care of some industrial stuff in there and making sure that we have the stock to ship it. So all of that is in there. All right, having dealt with the two hardware devices, now we proceed to software features. Our partners have been pushing us to support NIST 800-171, which is the technical requirements for CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model, which is regulatory compliance required for selling to the feds. And so we've been steadily chunking away at NIST SP 800 requirements for some time. And one of the key requirements that were there was to provide access enforcement, very fine-grained access enforcement, actually. So the way we do this is using our new MAC filter capability. So we introduced in 4.2 the ability to blacklist or whitelist MAC addresses on a per site and per group, aka VLAN basis. And so that means you can actually block specific MAC addresses, meaning specific devices, from joining the LAN, or let alone getting out to the internet. But in addition, you can also use whitelisting, which means basically every device is blocked from the LAN except those devices that are explicitly allowed. And this supports the access enforcement requirements of NIST 800. If you then turn on Active Directory, user access control, audit logging, all that kind of stuff, you basically have pretty much all of the requirements for NIST SP 800, except for the fact that VPN logins need to be MFA based. We're working on that, and that's coming very, very soon. So a future release will add that, at which point we'll be completely compliant to CMMC level 2. But the MAC level blacklisting, whitelisting was a key feature. It doesn't have to be used just for CMMC. It can be used for a lot of stuff. For example, we have a partner out in the East Coast who had an issue with IoT devices that were getting on the Wi-Fi and basically bringing down the entire Wi-Fi by bombarding it with, basically spamming it with authentication requests. So this can be used to block that, among many other things, of course. All right, another interesting feature that we added in 4.2 was to be able to support something on Windows Explorer that is kind of similar to the way Apple Time Machine works. So it's not the same as that, obviously, and Apple would probably sue us out of existence if we actually said, oh, this is Time Machine. No, it's not. But what it allows you to do is, if you're using Uplevel shares, you know that you can enable local snapshots and take snapshots of files for some arbitrary amounts of time. And then today if you wanted to get back, for example, a deleted file or folder that your user had accidentally deleted or overwritten or something, then you have to go into the Uplevel UI, go through the restore process, and then it'll create a recovery drive and all that, and you copy it out of the recovery drive, which takes a fair amount of time. Instead, what your users can now do is they can themselves browse the file history using Windows Explorer on the shares directly. So basically, all the user needs to do is to go to the share, assuming they have access to it, of course. Go to the share, right-click on it, select Properties. Under Properties, you'll see a tab called Previous Versions. Again, this is all Explorer, no Uplevel UI required to be involved. So you'll see something called Previous Versions. You can scroll up and down through the versions. Each version is a snapshot. You can go back to a time in the past where there was hopefully a file or folder. And then you'll get a view of the Uplevel share as it occurred in the snapshot in that previous time. And then you can go look for your file or folder, copy it all out, and you are done. So this is literally self-service recover. They can browse the file history and get it all back. So one caveat is this is only available on Windows machines. We have not figured out a way yet to enable it on a Mac. They have their own protocol for figuring out how to do time machine. But since 80 or 90% of our users use Windows, and there's at least one Windows machine in pretty much every location that I know of, you can do this directly from the LAN at any point. All right. A request that we've had many a time has been to pre-reserve IP and IP addresses for devices before they're even seen on the LAN. And so we introduced that in 4.2. So if you know the MAC address of your device, for example, it's some IoT device or it's a VoIP phone or something, you can actually go in and say, I would like to enter a MAC to IP mapping for this. And you type in the MAC address, give it the IP address you want to assign. It'll verify that it is within the DHCP range of the subnet that you want it to be on. You can even assign a DNS name to be pushed to the device as part of the DHCP transaction. And then the system will then, when it sees the MAC address, will push the correct IP address at a time. No need to go through and figure out what to do after it's got the wrong MAC address and you want to reassign it. In case the device is already on the LAN and got a DHCP address and it's not the one you wanted, you can actually now click on the device menu and change the IP address that DHCP assigns to it. And it'll accept it, assuming that it hasn't been already assigned and reserved by some other, assuming that you haven't reserved it for something else, it'll take and reserve it for that address, that MAC address, and it will then push that to the device when the next comes by to renew DHCP. So if it's already got the wrong IP, you can actually change it and set it to the right one. And within 10 minutes, it'll get the new IP. Of course, the caveat is that we can't possibly reassign static IPs. Those are assigned by you in the device itself. Our DHCP server does not provide that IP to the device. So if the device is statically assigned, we can't do anything about it. Only you can change its IP. But if the device is fetching an IP from our DHCP server, you can now pre-reserve and change it at will. Okay, so another request that has come by several times is to be able to have more fine-grained management of Wi-Fi SSIDs. So for example, this actually becomes even more pertinent when you have a work from home scenario. You may not want the SSIDs that are broadcast at the main office to also be all broadcast at the employees' houses. So this allows you to go on a per site basis and determine what SSIDs are broadcast at what sites. And in fact, to change the SSIDs assigned to specific VLANs at different sites. So for example, you could take the employees group and have the SSID at the main office be called, for example, staff. And at a different site, you could say, well, broadcast this also on the employees VLAN as users. And that should be no problem. I mean, there's obviously no great reason why you'd want to do specifically that, but I'm pretty sure there's plenty of other cases where you would want different SSIDs for the same VLAN at different sites. You can also turn off an SSID completely at a selected site. So if you, for example, had a boss SSID being broadcast to the main office and you did not want all of the work from home employees to see that, you can just turn it all off at the work from home locations. And finally, the Hiddenness Id capability has been a request. So you can now go in and say at this site, just turn it off. Just turn it off at all sites. So at that point, this becomes a hidden SSID, and only those who know what the SSID is can associate to the domain, to the SSID. You cannot go in, do a scan, and go, oh, I like to associate to that one. But yes, more fine-grained SSID management is in 4.2. In addition to these items, we have a whole grab bag of general improvements that we made. I mean, we could spend all day long on going through all the different things that we added here and there, but they weren't really worthy of spending a lot of time trying to to go into gory detail on it. We did notice that our AD setups were slowing down as people added more and more users, and in particular, more and more users plus more and more shared drives to the AD setup. So initially, most people had about 10 or 20 users, and that really wasn't a problem at all. But now we have AD setups that have 60 or 70 users, and sometimes there are 10 shares. And so it started slowing down quite a bit internally, not externally. The users never did see any issue in joining the domain. What is happening was the configuration status loop inside the gateway was slowing down just because it had to go through all the users and all the drives and essentially try and manage them all in serial order. So what we did was did a whole lot of work in trying to speed that up. And so we actually got like nearly half an order of magnitude speed up over what it is in the previous release. So when you configure something on the UI, it doesn't take forever before the configuration gets pushed down to the gateway, and the AD configuration on the gateway reflects that. Another thing that was requested was, especially when the number of users started shooting up, was the ability to search and sort on these users. So we added that to the AD UI. So if you're looking for a specific user, you don't know how to scroll and scroll and scroll to find it. So along with that, there were a bunch of other bug fixes and improvements we made on the AD side that are numerous, but not worth dredging up over here. Something new in release 4.2 is SMB version 3. So previously we had supported SMB version 1, SMB version 2. Now we have SMB version 3 as well. So it's brought up to Microsoft's, I think it is latest and greatest. Don't quote me on that, but it's SMB version 3 definitely is the most recent protocol incarnation. We did not want to take the chance to suddenly potentially cause interrupt problems in the field by just arbitrarily pushing SMB3 protocol support to every existing device, because they're all working fine with SMB1 and 2 at the moment. But if there's a setup that you think would do better with SMB3, then just give us a call and we'll enable that. When we have enough field experience with the upgrade and SMB3 has been enabled around the place, then we will, in the next release, most likely make that a default support as opposed to an explicitly enabled support. But it's there in the 4.2 release. Then, in addition, we did a bunch of things here and there that you probably noticed in the UI, but it's, I mean, there's no point delving into that. I mean, things like the long-term WAN bandwidth test, making it easier to use, making country blocking easier to use, showing the static IP settings, IP type, etc. And then there were just a ton of other bugs that we fixed in the process. Okay, so given that 4.2 is now upon us, the question is the rollout plan. I think most people are used to the way we do upgrades. So that is basically, we always coordinate the upgrades with you. We always want to make sure that we never blindside you with an upgrade, and we upgrade at your convenience in conjunction with what your customers, your customers' needs. So we plan to do exactly the same thing in 4.2. So we're working right now on a rollout plan with release schedule and so on. And so we are, as always, we will be staging out the upgrades on a schedule to make sure that everything goes smoothly. And we will be, of course, coordinating with you when we have the schedule all drafted up and upgrades are ready. So, of course, as with all the previous upgrades, if you want to be moved up in the queue or moved out in the queue, no problem at all. Just send us an email and we will be happy to do that. One of the things is that with this upgrade, we're moving straight from, say, 3.4 to 4.2. So we do have a very small handful of setups that are still using like 3.3.3 or something. And so what we'll do there is to first bump them to 3.4 and then bump them to 4.2. This will be completely transparent to you, by the way. You won't notice anything except possibly an extra upgrade message saying, hey, I'm upgraded to 3.3. It's like, wait, what? I thought you're supposed to be 4.2. And then you'll get 15 minutes later, another message saying, oh, it's now 4.2. So just warning you that we will be doing a staged upgrade, or sorry, a two-stage upgrade if there are setups with 3.3, of which there are very, very few. Most of the setups are on 4.1 and 3.4, so those will be upgraded straight to 4.2. This will happen over the next few weeks. We haven't got the upgrade rollout plan buttoned up yet, but as soon as that happens, then we'll get going on that. And of course, there are partners for whom we have done an early upgrade before. So if you have an immediate need, give us a call and we'll figure it out. Okay, I think that's about it. And if there are any questions, of course, we are available at these email addresses and phone numbers. So please feel free to call and ask if you have any questions, issues, or concerns. Now back to Cory.
So if you have questions, please post them now. We've got a couple of them. Go over to the chat. Can you show how you improve the country blocking? Do we have the ability to do that on this demo, Tom?
It would be a little difficult to actually switch over and pull up a UI thing, but I certainly would be delighted to show that one-on-one, but I can kind of describe it. We added a couple of canned setups, canned regions, as you were. So before we just had block US and everything except US and Canada, which was very drastic, and half the world's websites vanished. So what we have now are, over time, we have come up with a list of countries that are quote unquote safe. I guess safe is the relative term. And then a list of countries that are quote unquote, you should never have any reason to go to these. I mean, you know, if you find your customers going to North Korea, you probably need to ask real hard questions about what the heck are you guys doing? And there's a bunch of countries just like that, probably about, between 12 and 15 of those. So what we did there was we added a couple of entries where you could, in one shot, just say block all known bad countries, and a different one that says allow only known good countries, and put that in. In addition, we also cleaned up the way that you type in the country name, so it'll actually accept a lot of aliases so that you don't have to sit there and type in what is that, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is kind of their official name, but who the heck even thinks about that? So you just type in North Korea. And we added a table that you can pull up at will that says, here's your list of known countries. So far, the table keeps getting updated, but there's like 220 odd UN recognized countries in there with their country codes and the names and all that. So you don't have to sit there and guess at what the heck this country actually is. So those were the improvements I can remember right off the top of my head. I think behind the scenes, there have been a few changes we made down at the firmware level, but we won't go into those.
So again, if you want to see a live version of that, please send me an email, or I can reach out to you about it after the fact. We can get something scheduled. But if anybody else would like to see something live, just let us know. We can certainly schedule that. Do kind of a live demo of that feature. The next question is, Nick, will the firewall have a more granular feature set that we can select or deselect features and others?
I assume that is in relation to the country blocking slash content filtering slash IDS IPS. That is an interesting question. Well, actually, that's a good question. Maybe we should take that offline and actually elaborate on what exactly would be a granular feature that we could select and deselect. And so at this point in 4.2, I can say that there isn't anything, but we are always looking for suggestions to improve. And while we can't promise that we'll immediately implement the whole lot in one go, I mean, we're not that big yet, but we certainly try to get them in as quickly as we possibly can. So I guess, Cory, if you can set up a call, we could go over that and get some, get some feature requests in and start working with this.
Okay, yeah, I'll reach out to Nick after that. Another one from Nick is, will the storage of the gateway be upgradable, or can we attach external drive or NAS to the gateway for customers requiring a lot of storage, say 10 plus kilobyte?
That is a question that's come up several times. The issue with doing an in-field upgrade of the storage or even plugging in any external drives is that for security purposes, we actually encrypt everything on that storage. So that entire drive is 100% encrypted using AES 256. And the encryption key is saved in a protected area of the gateway flash at the factory. So quite literally, the drive is married to the gateway at the factory. And if you swap out, that is done so that if people steal a gateway, for example, and take it offsite and pull out the drive and try and pull the data off it, they will see absolutely nothing. It's just flat out gibberish. And so because it's fully encrypted and the key is not accessible. And so if you were to, however, field swap the drive, basically that would just go out the window. So that's really why the gateway drive is not field swappable. It is for security reasons, because there's an encryption key. And if you just unplug the drive and plug in a new drive, it would not work. It wouldn't be impossible to decrypt it. So only really the factory can go in, get the key out, decrypt or re-encrypt or whatever the drives. That being said, we do have a high-power gateway in the works that is, again, is coming out pretty soon. And so that would be a topic of a whole different webinar, but that one has multiple drive bays. And so there we will be looking for, well, we still can't do field swap, but we can most certainly offer a wider range and capability of storage. We can't do field swap for the same reason as I just said, it's encryption. I mean, if you could do a field swap, then you could steal somebody's data. But certainly providing more storage options is very much in the near-term roadmap.
Skipped over one. Just to clarify, we will not be charged for AD with 4.2. I assume that they're not using AD currently, they won't be charged for it moving forward after the upgrade.
Correct. If you're not using AD currently, an upgrade to 4.2 will not enable it, will not cause a charge for it, will not do anything undue. The only thing that you'll notice is that the UI will now show a directory entry for configuration, whether you have AD or not. And if you ever look at that, then you'll notice that it's not enabled. And yes, and then you won't be getting charged for it. If you have AD enabled, it'll just keep working the way it always has.
Will the snapshot view from Explorer work with existing snapshots?
Yes, if you have existing snapshots on the drive, they will all, as soon as the upgrade is performed, the system will actually convert them, not convert them, they'll actually create the necessary data structures so that the Windows Explorer protocol will see them as the file versions. And actually, Bob mentioned that it's shadow copy. Yep, that is exactly 100% correct. We actually use the Windows VSS volume shadow service to be able to provide this capability. So what we've basically just done is integrate in with the Windows Explorer and the Windows VSS functions to be to have our snapshots show up as Windows versions.
Okay. And the last question that we've got so far is what's on the roadmap after this?
That's a loaded question. I think most people just hate, most people in sales and marketing absolutely, totally hate the thought that I would be asked for roadmaps because I tend to be far too talkative. So I will try and avoid getting into deep doo-doo with the rest of the crew at Uplevel, but I'll throw out some teasers. So we do have items on the roadmap that are being worked on in the near term. One I just alluded to was the high power gateway. That is something we are looking at. So we've seen that two things are happening. One is that a lot more users are getting stuffed onto an up-level gateway than we actually anticipated. It's sort of going beyond 99 users per site that we originally designed for. So while the existing gateway, the white box, is capable of handling about 130 users without any problem, and we've tested it to like 170 Active Directory users without issues. That's still not enough. So we're looking at a high power gateway that will handle both line rate at a full 1 gig up-down fiber link at the same time as hosting something like 250 to 400 users, depending upon the level of security you're shooting for. So AD for like 250 users and non-AD for up to like 400 users. So that's one that's in the near-term roadmap. And the other one is Wi-Fi 6. Wi-Fi 6 is upon us. From long experience in my previous life, I swore that we would not put out a non-standard Wi-Fi product, having been on the receiving end and the sending end of non-standard Wi-Fi products. But now Wi-Fi 6 is a standard. Therefore, we are working diligently on a Wi-Fi 6 access point. So that is coming also very soon now. There are multiple other things software-wise on the roadmap. So, AD integration with Azure AD and a bunch of other different things that we're working on. Obviously, MFA for VPN, that is something that we're working on actively right now. So it's like within weeks, we have to get that out quick. So that's all in there. So the roadmap is full, but it's coming.
Right. A couple more just came in. How many work from home gateways can we have on our current hardware?
On a current deployment, I guess there's no particular limit on the number of work from home gateways on the deployment. It's a very small and pretty low overhead gateway as far as our cloud is concerned. And so, I mean, we've had like close to 40 gateways in a single site that's a full-size gateway. And so from work from home perspective, I would not be surprised if our cloud could handle double that many in terms of work from home gateways.
I think Glenn should try to find out for us. All right, and then the last one that came in was the new PoE does not need external power injection.
For the new AP, yes. It does not need external power injectors, of course. You can use our standard external power injector if you have a situation, but you can plug it straight into one of the Uplevel switches, and yes, it powers right up and comes online and off it goes.
Okay, one more that just came in from Baron Harrison. Are you saying the old gateway can now handle or now enable AD?
I'm sorry, the old gateway can?
can the old gateway now enable AD?
Yes, correct. With the 4.2 upgrade, basically there is no reason, obviously no need to have a firmware upgrade for AD. Basically, it will just be there, and you can turn it on at will, turn it off at will. Well, of course, I have to say for Cory's benefit that if we turn it on, then there is a subscription charge, but there is no reason to ever call us and say, I need AD, and then we have ops do the upgrade. That goes away.
Can we enable AD for demo or trial purposes?
Yes, with the 4.2 by definition, it will be rolled out to everyone. And so basically you just enable AD for demo or trial.
I guess at that point, if it is for demo, just let us know that it's for a 1 month period and keep an eye on it from a builder perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically making it much easier to enable, disable, do whatever with AD, because now it's become no longer a, wow, this is all new and it's never been there in the world and we should tread carefully. Well, it's now been out for close to 2 years, and we have lots of AD setups running and doing just fine. So there's no need to treat it with kid gloves anymore.
One more. Probably depends on the office, but what is the typical bandwidth consumed per work from home gateway?
Typical bandwidth on the office link, the ISP link itself, in terms of the bandwidth consumed on ISP link, there's really two parts. One is, of course, the user's bandwidth. That's entirely up to the user. If the user is busily doing Facebook live streaming, then all bets are off. But the cloud bandwidth, that is consumed on by the work from home gateway on the user's home ISP link is pretty minimal, because it only has like 4 ports and there's really only a very small number of devices that are normally plugged into it. And so it's usually in the range of a few kilobytes per second, if that. And so that's very, very minimal.
One more second here to see if there's any more questions that come through. Double check and make sure I didn't miss any. Not seeing any additional. Okay, I think that does it. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us. Really appreciate your time. If you do have any additional questions after this, please feel free to give me a call or an email, and I'll do my best to get those questions answered for you. And we will, of course, have this posted for your viewing again once it's all wrapped up. So thank you again. Have a great afternoon. Appreciate your time.